I want to tell you something that may sound impossible, but I promise you it's true. Last week, a woman came to me, her eyes hollow with worry, her hands trembling as she twisted a worn handkerchief, and she whispered the words I've heard 1,000 times. Florence, I'm 43 years old, and I've never had money. It's too late for me, isn't it? I looked at her with all the love in my heart and said what I'm about to say to you right now. The universe doesn't know how old you are. Money doesn't check your birth certificate before it flows into your life. And everything you've been told about age and limitation and missed opportunities is a lie that someone frightened planted in your mind. And today, we're going to uproot it completely. You see, I've watched miracles unfold in the lives of people who society had written off as too old, too broke, too stuck. I've seen a 57-year-old woman who hadn't worked in decades suddenly manifest a business opportunity that changed everything. I've witnessed a man at 62, drowning in debt, speak one single powerful sentence into the universe and watch his entire financial reality reorganize itself within 6 months. And I've learned something that the fearful mind doesn't want you to know. Your so-called money blocks aren't actually about money at all. They're about a spiritual law you've been violating without even knowing it. And once you understand this law, the law of unexpected supply, everything changes. Right now, as you're listening to these words, you might be thinking about your age. You might be calculating how many years you've struggled, how many opportunities you think you've missed, how little time you believe you have left to turn things around. You might be feeling that familiar ache in your chest that says it's too late, you're too far behind. Everyone else figured this out when they were young, and you somehow missed the boat. But darling, what if I told you that every single year you've lived, every failure you've endured, every closed door you've faced has actually been preparation for the exact moment you're in right now? What if your age isn't your obstacle, it's your advantage? Think about it. When you were 20, you thought you knew everything, but you were terrified of everything. You had energy, yes, but you also had insecurity, self-doubt, and a desperate need for everyone's approval. You made decisions based on what others expected, not what your soul demanded. You confused motion with purpose, busyness with meaning. But now you've lived enough to know the difference between what glitters and what's actually gold. You've been burned enough times to recognize red flags from a mile away. You've survived enough storms to trust your own navigation system. This isn't a deficit, darling. This is wisdom, and wisdom is the most powerful creative force in the universe. I've watched people reinvent themselves at 40, 50, 60, and beyond, not despite their age, but because of it. There's a woman I know who started her business at 57, after spending 30 years in a soul-crushing corporate job. Everyone told her she was crazy. Her own family said, "At your age, just coast to retirement." But she had finally learned something those 30 years had taught her. She'd rather fail at something she loved than succeed at something that was killing her spirit slowly. Within 3 years, she built something remarkable. Not because she had youth's energy, but because she had something far more valuable: clarity. She knew exactly what she wanted, who she was, and what she would no longer tolerate. She didn't waste time on trends that didn't align with her vision. She didn't second-guess herself into paralysis. She moved with the confidence that only comes from having already survived your own worst fears. See, when you're young, you think you have unlimited time, so you squander it. You delay, you wait for perfect conditions, you let fear make your decisions. But when you reach a certain age and realize time is actually precious, something magical happens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for permission. You stop caring whether people understand your choices. You simply move. And in that movement, something extraordinary happens. The universe begins to rearrange itself around your clarity. I've watched this pattern repeat itself in countless lives. A woman decides she's done with a marriage that's been dying for years. She doesn't have all the money figured out. She doesn't have a perfect plan. But the moment she speaks her truth out loud, opportunities appear. A friend mentions a spare room, a job offer surfaces. The path reveals itself because she finally stopped blocking it with her indecision. This is how the spiritual law works. It doesn't reward your fear. It doesn't respond to your wavering. It meets your conviction with momentum. When you're uncertain, you're essentially standing in a doorway, blocking the flow. Energy can't move through you. Blessings can't reach you. You're in the way of your own good. But the moment you choose, the moment you commit fully to one direction, the entire universe can finally work on your behalf. And here's what nobody tells you. The choice itself matters less than the decisiveness behind it. I've seen people agonize for months over which city to move to, which career path to take, which relationship to pursue. They gather information endlessly, they make lists, they seek signs, and all the while, they're starving themselves of forward motion. Then one day, they just choose. Sometimes they choose what seems like the wrong option, but because they choose with full commitment, it becomes right. Doors open, resources appear, new connections emerge, not because they made the perfect choice, but because they made a definitive one. The universe works with commitment. It cannot work with maybe. Think about water for a moment. When water is uncertain, it pools and stagnates. But when water knows its direction, even slightly, it becomes a river. It carves through mountains. It shapes landscapes. It becomes unstoppable, not because of its force, but because of its decisiveness. You are that water. Your life force is meant to flow, not to sit in anxious pools of indecision, and the moment you tip yourself toward any clear direction, you become that river. You gain momentum. You gain power. You begin to shape your world instead of being shaped by it. This is the secret that people who seem lucky understand instinctively. They're not luckier. They're not more blessed. They're simply more decisive. They choose quickly, commit fully, and adjust as they go. They understand that a good decision made today is worth more than a perfect decision made never. I've watched people spend months, even years, agonizing over decisions that successful people make in minutes. And what's fascinating is this: the outcome is often exactly the same. Sometimes the quick decision even turns out better, because it was made with fresh intuition rather than overthought anxiety. Think about it. When you deliberate too long, you're not gathering wisdom, and you're gathering fear. Every extra day of indecision is another day for doubt to whisper its poison in your ear. Another day for well-meaning friends to plant seeds of hesitation. Another day for your brilliant idea to lose its vital energy. The universe favors the bold, not the perfect. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Successful people make just as many mistakes as everyone else. They choose the wrong business partner. They invest in ideas that flop. They take paths that lead nowhere. But here's the difference: they fail forward. They extract the lesson, adjust their course, and keep moving. While others are still deliberating over decision number 1, they've already made decisions 2 through 10, learned from 3 failures, and hit 2 home runs. This is what I call momentum intelligence. Every decision creates momentum. Every action generates feedback. And feedback is the breakfast of champions. You cannot steer a stationary ship. You must be moving to adjust your direction. I've seen this principle play out countless times in my own life. The decisions I've agonized over rarely turned out better than the ones I made quickly from a place of inner knowing. That quiet voice inside your intuition, your higher wisdom, whatever you choose to call it, it speaks loudest in the first moment. After that, it's usually just your ego doing calculations and creating scenarios. So here's what I want you to understand. Indecision is a decision. It's a decision to stay exactly where you are. It's a decision to let life happen to you rather than for you. And it's often the most costly decision of all, because you're spending your most precious, non-renewable resource time and getting absolutely nothing in return. The wealthy know their time has value. They would rather make a decision and buy back their mental energy than save a few dollars and spend weeks in analysis paralysis. The poor mindset convinces you that hesitation is prudence, that waiting is wisdom, that sleeping on it for the 19th night in a row is somehow different from the previous 18. But here's what's really happening. You're asking for permission that will never come. You're waiting for certainty in a world that offers none. I once watched someone spend 3 months deciding whether to invest in a course that cost less than their monthly coffee budget. 3 months of research. 3 months of comparison shopping. 3 months of asking for opinions from people who had never taken the course, never pursued that skill, never achieved the result they were seeking. By the time they finally decided to buy it, the promotion had ended, the price had doubled, and most tragically, they were 3 months further from their goal, with nothing to show for their careful consideration. Meanwhile, the wealthy person sees something aligned with their vision, evaluates it in minutes or hours, makes the decision, and moves forward. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but decisively. They understand that the cost of the wrong decision is almost always less than the cost of no decision at all. Because here's the truth that poverty consciousness desperately hides from you. Most decisions are reversible. Most paths have exits. Most mistakes are correctable. But time moves in only one direction. The month you spend deliberating is a month you'll never get back. The year you spend waiting for the right moment is a year of your life that's gone forever. The wealthy know something profound. They can handle being wrong. Their identity isn't so fragile that a mistake will shatter it. They've made peace with the fact that some decisions won't work out, and they've built the resilience to course correct quickly when that happens. The poor, by contrast, are so terrified of making the wrong choice that they make no choice at all, which is, ironically, always the wrong choice. There's another dimension to this that rarely gets talked about. The rich understand that decisions are time's reversible asterisk. They know that most choices aren't carved in stone. If they invest in a business and it's not working, they sell. If they hire someone who isn't performing, they let them go. If they move to a new city and hate it, they move again. This mental flexibility, this willingness to undo what isn't working, gives them an enormous advantage. The poor treat every decision like it's permanent. They stay in jobs they hate for decades because they once chose that path. They remain in toxic relationships because they said, "I do." They keep failing businesses on life support because they're too proud to admit the initial decision was flawed. There's this unspoken belief that changing your mind is weakness, that pivoting is failure. So they double down on bad decisions, pouring more time, money, and energy into choices that stopped serving them years ago. I've watched people destroy themselves this way. A friend of mine bought a franchise that turned out to be a nightmare. Endless hours, razor-thin margins, constant problems. But because she'd invested everything into it, she felt she had no choice but to keep going. "I can't quit now," she'd say. "I've already put in 3 years. Those 3 years became 5, then 7. By the time she finally walked away, she'd lost her health, her marriage, and a decade of her life. The rich would have cut their losses after 6 months. You see, wealthy people have developed what psychologists call adaptive flexibility. They're not attached to being right about their past decisions. They're attached to making the times, right decision now, asterisk, given current information. If the landscape has changed, they change with it. If new data suggests a different path, they take it. Their ego isn't wrapped up in defending yesterday's choice. And here's what makes this especially powerful. This flexibility compounds over time. When you're willing to course correct quickly, your mistakes cost you less. Small losses stay small. You spend less time in situations that drain you and more time in situations that energize you. The trajectory of your life bends upward because you're constantly optimizing, constantly adjusting, constantly learning. The poor spend their lives defending decisions that no longer make sense, if they ever did. They'd rather be consistently wrong than admit they need to change direction. Think about the person who stays in the same city their entire life because it's home, even though that city offers no opportunities in their field. They'll romanticize their loyalty to a place that doesn't serve them. Meanwhile, you understand that home isn't a location. It's a state of prosperity you create wherever opportunity calls you. The wealthy have what I call strategic flexibility. You hold your values tightly, but your methods loosely. You're deeply committed to your outcome, but wonderfully indifferent to the path that gets you there. If door number 1 closes, you're already analyzing doors 2 through 10. You don't take it personally. You take it strategically. I've watched people cling to business models that the market abandoned years ago. They'll spend a decade trying to resurrect something dead rather than 3 months building something new. Why? Because admitting they were wrong feels like dying. But here's the truth they'll never grasp. Being wrong about a decision doesn't make you a wrong person. It makes you someone who now has more information. You understand the profound difference between consistency and stubbornness. Consistency is showing up every day to do the work. Stubbornness is doing the same work even after it stops working. One is discipline, the other is delusion. When you invest in something, a business, a stock, a strategy, you set clear criteria for success and failure. You decide in advance what signs will tell you to hold and what signs will tell you to fold. The poor? They make decisions based on hope and ego, then spend years gathering evidence that they weren't stupid. They'd rather lose everything slowly than admit they made a mistake quickly. This is why you have stop losses, not just in trading, but in life. You know exactly when to cut your losses on a project, a partnership, a pursuit. You don't wait until you're completely destroyed. You exit while you still have resources to redirect. You understand that detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care enough about yourself to refuse to be held hostage by any single outcome. You care enough about your peace to refuse to make your happiness conditional on circumstances aligning perfectly. I've watched people transform their entire reality simply by loosening their grip. They stop micromanaging the universe. They stop demanding that life deliver exactly what they ordered, exactly when they ordered it, exactly how they pictured it. And in that surrender, not a surrender of defeat, but a surrender of trust, the most extraordinary things begin to unfold. You see, when you're desperately attached, you send out a frequency of lack, of fear, of, I need this, or I'll fall apart. And the universe, responding to that frequency, often withholds the very thing you're clutching at. But when you step back, when you say, I'd love this, but I'm complete either way, you send out a frequency of abundance, of confidence, of wholeness. And suddenly, doors open that you didn't even know existed. This is the paradox that confuses so many people. They think, if I stop caring so much, won't I lose my edge? Won't I become complacent? But it's precisely the opposite. Attachment makes you rigid, anxious, controlling. Detachment makes you fluid, creative, adaptive. Attachment narrows your vision to one specific path. Detachment opens your eyes to 1,000 paths you never considered. Think about the entrepreneur who's so attached to their original business plan that they ignore every signal from the market telling them to pivot. They go down with the ship, clinging to their vision even as it sinks. Compare that to the entrepreneur who holds their vision lightly, who says, I'm committed to solving this problem, but I'm flexible about the form the solution takes. That person survives. That person thrives. That person builds something even better than they originally imagined because they were willing to work with reality rather than against it. Or consider the artist who's so attached to one style, one medium, one expression of their creativity that they become trapped in it. They keep producing the same work over and over, wondering why it feels lifeless. Meanwhile, the artist who experiments, who isn't attached to being known for one thing, who allows their creativity to evolve, that artist stays alive, stays relevant, stays inspired. The moment you stop clinging to what you think you should be, you open the door to what you're meant to become. And here's something most people never realize. Attachment doesn't just block new things from coming in. It actually distorts your perception of what you already have. When you're attached to a relationship, you stop seeing the person clearly. You see your need, your fear, your projection. When you're attached to money, you stop seeing abundance everywhere and only focus on scarcity. When you're attached to an outcome, you stop noticing all the other doors opening around you. Detachment gives you clarity. It's like cleaning a window you didn't even know was dirty. Suddenly, you can see reality as it actually is, not as your fears and desires have painted it. I remember working with someone who was desperately attached to getting a promotion at work. Every conversation became about it. Every action was calculated. They couldn't enjoy a single day because they were so focused on this future outcome. And ironically, that desperation, that attachment, was the very thing making them less likely to get it. People could feel it. It created pressure, awkwardness, forced energy. When they finally let it go, not gave up, but genuinely released their stranglehold on it, everything shifted. They started showing up differently, more present, more confident, more themselves. And within 2 months, the opportunity came, but in a completely different form than they'd imagined. Better, actually. That's the paradox. The moment you stop needing something so desperately is often the moment it becomes available to you, because you've finally created the energetic space for it to enter your life. Think about it in terms of relationships. Have you ever noticed that people in happy relationships often attract more romantic attention than when they were single and desperate? That's not cruel irony, that's energy. When you're complete within yourself, when you're not attached to finding someone, you radiate a different frequency. You're magnetic because you're whole, not because you're hunting. The same principle applies to everything. When you chase money desperately, it eludes you. When you chase love frantically, it runs. But when you stand in your power, complete in yourself, Knowing your worth, everything comes to find you. This isn't passivity, this is mastery. I've watched people transform their entire financial situation by changing one thing: their inner conversation. A woman once told me she was drowning in debt, constantly anxious, always focused on what she lacked. I asked her to change her inner dialogue. Instead of "I don't have enough," she began affirming, "Money flows to me easily and continuously." She resisted at first. It felt like lying. But I reminded her, your current thoughts created your current reality. If you want a different reality, you need different thoughts. Within weeks, unexpected checks arrived. An old debt someone owed her was suddenly repaid. A new opportunity emerged from nowhere. Was it magic? No, it was alignment. When she stopped vibrating at the frequency of lack, she stopped attracting lack. She opened herself to receive because she believed she was worthy of receiving. This is where most people stumble. They say the words, but they don't believe them. They affirm abundance while clutching poverty consciousness in their hearts. You cannot trick the universe. Your subconscious mind knows what you truly believe, and it will always create evidence for those beliefs. So how do you shift a deeply held belief? You starve the old thought and feed the new one. Every time the old belief surfaces, "I'm not good enough, I'll never have enough, love isn't meant for me," you catch it. You don't fight it, you simply refuse to energize it. You pivot. You replace it with the truth you're choosing to embody. At first, this feels mechanical. You're going through the motions. But persistence creates momentum. The new thought begins to take root, and one day, you realize you actually believe it. It's no longer an affirmation you're forcing, it's your new reality. I want you to understand something crucial. Your past does not dictate your future unless you keep dragging it along. So many people are haunted by what was. They wear their wounds like badges, constantly telling the same stories of betrayal, failure, and disappointment. And what happens? They keep recreating those exact experiences. Your biography is not your destiny. What happened to you does not define what's possible for you. The moment you decide to release the old story, you free yourself to write a new one. And here's what I want you to understand. Releasing the old story doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means changing your relationship to it. It means stopping the endless replay, the constant rehearsal of past wounds. It means you stop introducing yourself through your pain. I've watched people carry their stories like credentials, like badges of identity. I'm the one who was betrayed. I'm the person who lost everything. I'm the child who wasn't chosen. And yes, these things happened. But the question is, how long will you let them speak for you? There's a woman I know who spent 15 years telling everyone about the business partner who stole from her. 15 years. Every conversation somehow circled back to that betrayal. It became her greeting card, her autobiography, her explanation for everything that didn't work out afterward. And then one day someone asked her, "What would you talk about if you couldn't talk about that anymore?" She went silent, because she'd built her entire identity around being the victim of that one event. When she finally decided to release it, not to forgive, not to forget, but simply to stop giving it center stage, something remarkable happened. She started noticing opportunities she'd been blind to. She started building new relationships instead of protecting herself from them. She started living forward instead of backward. This is the power of deciding who you will be from this moment on, independent of who you've been. Now, let me address something important. You might be thinking, "But I've tried to move on. I've tried to let go. It doesn't work." And here's what I need you to see. Trying to suppress a story is not the same as releasing it. When you push something down, you're still in relationship with it. You're still giving it your energy, just in a different form. True release happens when you acknowledge the story, honor what it taught you, and then consciously choose to stop rehearsing it. You thank it for the strength it built in you, the wisdom it brought you, and then you set it down like an old coat that no longer fits. And when you set it down, something miraculous happens. You stop being the person to whom that thing happened, and you become the person who moved through it. There's a massive difference between those two identities. One keeps you frozen in time, the other sets you in motion. The woman who was betrayed 20 years ago and still tells that story at every dinner party is living in a loop. The woman who was betrayed learned her worth, rebuilt her life, and now helps other women do the same. She's living in expansion. Same event, completely different energy. This is what Florence understood about the power of words and the stories we attach to them. She knew that every time you retell a painful story, you're not just remembering it, you're recreating it. You're pulling that old energy into your present moment and giving it permission to shape your future. And the universe, which is always listening, always responding, takes that as an instruction. It says, "Oh, you're still identifying with that? You still see yourself as wounded? Okay. Here are more situations that will confirm that identity." But the moment you change the story, the universe changes its response. When you say, "That happened, and it was hard, but I'm not defined by it anymore," everything shifts. You're no longer a victim of your past. You're a student of it. And students graduate. They don't stay in the same grade forever, reliving the same lessons. Now, I want to be clear about something. Releasing the past doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It doesn't mean spiritual bypassing or slapping a positive affirmation over a wound that hasn't healed. Real release requires real honesty. You have to look at what happened, feel what you need to feel, and process it fully. But then, and this is the part people miss, you have to make a conscious decision to stop letting it run your life. This is where the work shifts from passive to active. You stop being the victim of your story and become the author of your next chapter. I'm not saying you rewrite history. I'm not saying you pretend it didn't hurt. I'm saying you decide what meaning you're going to carry forward. Here's what I mean. A woman came to me once who had been betrayed by a business partner. They'd built something together, and he walked away with everything. The clients, the reputation, the money. She was devastated. For 2 years, she told anyone who would listen about what he'd done. She wore her betrayal like a badge. When I met her, she was stuck, completely stuck, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. She couldn't move forward because she was still living in that moment of betrayal. I asked her a simple question. What if this betrayal was actually protecting you from something worse? What if it was redirecting you towards something better? She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But I pressed further. What if the universe needed to shake you loose from that partnership because you were never meant to build someone else's dream? What if you were meant to build your own? She sat with that. And slowly, something shifted. She didn't forgive him overnight. She didn't send him a Christmas card or pretend they were friends. But she stopped giving him power over her present. She stopped rehearsing the story. She stopped defining herself by what he'd taken. And within a year, she'd started her own business, one that was more aligned with who she really was, one that succeeded beyond what the partnership ever could have. The betrayal didn't become a good thing. But it stopped being the only thing. That's what release looks like. It's not about condoning what happened. It's about refusing to let it colonize your future. You see, unforgiveness is a form of bondage. It keeps you tied to the very person or situation you want to be free from. Every time you revisit the anger, you're reinforcing the chain. Every time you replay the hurt, you're choosing to stay in that prison. And here's the real kicker. The person who hurt you, they're probably not even thinking about it. They've moved on. They're living their life. Meanwhile, you're carrying them around like a backpack full of stones. Who's really being punished here? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a decision right now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel like it. Not when they apologize. Right now. Decide that you're done carrying this weight. Decide that your peace matters more than being right. Decide that your future is more valuable than your past. And listen, this doesn't mean you're condoning what happened. It doesn't mean you're saying, "Oh, it's all fine, everything's great, no harm done." That's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness isn't about them at all. It's about you taking back your power. It's about you saying, "I refuse to let this define me anymore." I've worked with people who've held on to grudges for decades. Decades. And you know what's fascinating? When you ask them what they're angry about, half the time they have to pause and remember. The specifics have faded, but the habit of resentment, that's stuck around. They've been carrying this emotional baggage for so long, they don't even remember why they picked it up in the first place. But it's become part of their identity. They're the person who was wronged, and they wear it like a badge. But here's the truth bomb. Nobody's giving out awards for longest-held resentment. There's no trophy for most committed to being miserable. The universe doesn't look down and say, "Wow, look how loyal they are to their anger. Let's reward them." No, the universe responds to your energy. And if your energy is stuck in the past, guess what? Your blessings can't reach you in the present. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to receive a package, a beautiful gift meant just for you. But your hands are full of old newspapers from 5 years ago. You're clutching them so tightly, both fists clenched around yellowed paper that nobody cares about anymore. The delivery person shows up with your gift, and you look at them and say, "I can't take it, my hands are full." That's what unforgiveness does. It occupies the space where your blessings should land. So let it go. Open your hands. Drop those old newspapers. They're not even relevant anymore. The stories they told, they're over. Done. Finished. And yes, maybe they hurt. Maybe they were unfair. Maybe they were absolutely completely wrong. But continuing to hold on to them doesn't change a single word that was printed. It just keeps your hands too full to receive what's coming next. I've watched people carry grudges like precious heirlooms, polishing them daily, making sure they never lose their shine. And what do they get for all that careful maintenance? Bitterness. Isolation. A story they tell themselves over and over until they can't remember what life felt like before the hurt. The universe doesn't reward loyalty to pain, it rewards openness to good. There's a woman I know who was betrayed by a business partner 20 years ago. 20 years. She still brings it up in conversation. She still uses it as evidence for why people can't be trusted, why the world is unfair, why she has to protect herself. And here's what breaks my heart. She's been offered opportunities since then, partnerships that could have changed everything for her. She turned them all down. Not because they weren't good, but because she was still holding on to that old wound so tightly that her hands weren't free to reach for anything new. She thought she was being wise, careful, protecting herself from being hurt again. But wisdom isn't about building walls so high nothing can get in. It's about discernment. It's about knowing that what one person did doesn't define what everyone will do. It's about understanding that the universe has a million ways to bring good into your life, and if you block them all because of one bad experience, you're not protecting yourself, you're imprisoning yourself. Forgiveness isn't saying, "What you did was okay." It's saying, "What you did no longer gets to define my future." There's tremendous power in that distinction. You're not condoning, you're not forgetting, you're not even necessarily reconciling. You're simply refusing to let the past have voting rights in your present. I can hear some of you thinking, "But you don't understand what happened to me." And you're right, I don't. Your pain is yours, and I won't minimize it. But I do know this. Whatever happened to you, no matter how terrible, is doubled in its damage when you carry it forward. The original hurt happened once. Every time you replay it, rehearse it, use it as proof of how the world works, you're hurting yourself again. You're doing to yourself what they did to you. And the person who hurt you? They're probably not thinking about it at all. They're living their life. And here you are, still bleeding from a wound they inflicted years ago, still organizing your entire existence around something they probably forgot about by Tuesday. Is that really the legacy you want to give them? That much power? There's a reason why spiritual teachers throughout history have insisted on forgiveness, not because it's virtuous or noble or makes you a good person, though it does all those things. They insisted on it because holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You are the one who suffers. You are the one whose life contracts. You are the one who can't sleep at night. Your unforgiveness doesn't punish them. It punishes you. And I know what you're thinking, but Florence, if I forgive them, doesn't that mean I'm saying what they did was okay? No, absolutely not. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean you have to invite them to Sunday dinner or pretend everything's fine. Forgiveness means you're releasing the energetic cord that binds you to that painful event. It means you're taking back the power you've been giving them all this time. It means you're deciding that your peace matters more than your grudge. Think of it like this. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a suitcase full of rocks everywhere you go. Sure, maybe someone else packed that suitcase. Maybe they're the ones who put the rocks in there. But you're the one carrying it. You're the one whose back is breaking. You're the one who can't run, can't dance, can't move freely through life because you're lugging around this enormous weight. And the beautiful, terrible truth is this. You can set it down anytime you want. Nobody's forcing you to carry it. You just have to be willing to let it go. I remember a student who came to me, furious with her mother. Years of criticism, judgment, impossible standards. She cataloged every slight, every cutting remark, every moment she felt unseen and unloved. And I listened. And then I asked her, "How's that working for you? All that anger?" All that resentment, is it making your life better or worse? She started to cry. Because she knew the answer. Her resentment wasn't hurting her mother, it was hurting her. It was affecting her marriage, her parenting, her health, her happiness. I asked her, if you were to release this resentment completely, not for your mother's sake, but for yours, what would change in your life? She paused, her eyes filled with tears. Everything, she whispered. And that's the spiritual truth nobody tells you about resentment. It doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. When you hold on to resentment, you're carrying someone else's debt on your back. And the interest compounds daily. It costs you your peace, your joy, your vitality, your present moment. The Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Why? Because held anger turns toxic. It ferments into resentment. And resentment becomes a prison you've built with your own hands. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile with someone who hurt you. It doesn't mean you become a doormat. Forgiveness means you stop letting the past rent space in your present. I've watched people transform their entire lives by releasing one old resentment. I've seen chronic pain disappear, relationships heal, opportunities suddenly appear that were blocked before. Because here's what happens energetically. Resentment creates a barrier. It's like static on a radio frequency. It blocks the flow of good trying to reach you. When you release it, you open the channel, you become available for miracles again. So I taught Sarah a simple spiritual practice. Every morning she would say, I release you completely. I bless you and set you free. And I set myself free. Not because her mother deserved it, but because Sarah deserved peace. 3 months later, she wrote to me. Her marriage had completely turned around. Her husband said it was like living with a different person. Her chronic migraines had stopped, and her business had doubled. Had her mother changed? Not one bit. But Sarah had changed everything. She had chosen a different meaning. She had chosen a different story. And in that choice, the entire dynamic shifted. This is what I want you to understand deeply. You are not trapped by other people's behavior. You are only trapped by your interpretation of it. Your mother-in-law's criticism? It's only wounding if you decide it means you're inadequate. Your partner's silence? It's only rejection if you decide it means you're unloved. Your friend's success? It's only threatening if you decide it means there's less for you. The spiritual law is clear. What you decree, you create. What you name, you claim. What you decide something means becomes your lived experience of it. I've watched people transform impossible situations simply by changing their decree. The job that felt like a prison became a training ground. The illness that seemed like a curse became a teacher. The loss that appeared to be an ending became a doorway. Nothing changes until you change what you've decided it means. And here's what makes this so powerful. When you change your interpretation, you change your vibration. When you change your vibration, you change what you attract. When you change what you attract, your entire external reality begins to shift. You stop fighting. You stop resisting. You stop needing people to be different so you can feel okay. Instead, you become the author, the interpreter, the one who decides. This is sovereignty. This is spiritual maturity. This is how you stop being a victim of circumstance and become a creator of experience. So today, I'm inviting you to look at the situation that's been troubling you, the relationship that feels stuck, the circumstance that seems impossible, the pattern that keeps repeating, and ask yourself, what have I decided this means? What story have I been telling myself about what this situation says about me, about life, about what's possible? Because I promise you, that story is not the truth. It's just one possible interpretation. And if it's causing you suffering, it's time to choose another one. You have that power. You've always had it. And the moment you claim it, everything changes.